She's going to be speaking for us here shortly. She is a missionary in Bangolo Hospital, and she had a special training program through Samaritan's Purse, and she arrived at Bangolo Hospital in 2009, I believe, with her family in rural southern rainforest. And in 2009, they moved there and had 3 beautiful children, Esther, Eli, and Hannah. The Hofman's prayer is that God would continue to bless their family in knowing him better and making him known. Wendy is the first missionary to be part of the COS Foster Missionary Program. On a personal note, I've known Wendy to be a humble, soft-spoken hero of the faith and taking on multiple subspecialty challenges in a remote setting. Her love for Christ is genuine and inspiring and motivates her care for patients both physically and spiritually. She basically built the eye clinic in Gabon from the ground up, and she began an ophthalmology residency there. She received the Artemis Award in 2015 from the AAO for her exemplary care and service. So let's welcome Wendy, and we look forward to hearing from her.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Let's see, got the flipper. So today we're just going to talk about one way to run an MSICS training program, and it's mostly based off of my personal experience in Gabon. So we're going to talk about ways to conduct a program, benefits of training local surgeons, and some challenges associated with a program like that. So this is where we're located. Gabon is in West Central Africa, and we are in the southern part of Gabon, southern central Gabon, so it's about 350 miles from the capital city of Libreville. This is what my family looked like when we got there in 2009, my husband Eric and I, and this is what we looked like a couple weeks ago in front of our village church in Gabon. So we all know that cataract is the leading cause of avoidable blindness throughout the world, and we also know that population throughout the world is increasing, and even in Gabon, the expectation through this study in the Lancet, specifically for the country of Gabon, shows on the left-hand side the females, the right-hand side males, and on the vertical axis the age for the population distribution that's expected. So in a few years ago, the blue line shows that there were a lot more babies and children in Gabon versus the orange line shows that in 80 years there's going to be a big population explosion in the age range of patients with cataracts. So why train in MSICS? MSICS is an answer to the global cataract problem and has characteristics that are really beneficial for addressing this problem. It's less expensive than phaco. It has a simpler supply chain. The results are excellent. It's slightly faster than phaco, arguably. It's excellent for hard nuclei, and in a lot of these places, such as in Gabon, there are no subspecialists, so if you drop a piece of nucleus during a phaco case, you can't just send them to your friendly VR surgeon. Versus in MSICS, the lens is delivered whole, so that's much less likely to occur. So there are various models for learning MSICS. If you're an American and you want to learn MSICS, then maybe you would go with a short-term program such as Vision Outreach International. But mostly we're going to be talking here about training Africans. So there's the 2 different models that we considered in Gabon was a full residency, ophthalmology residency program versus an MSICS surgical fellowship. So some different characteristics that distinguish these 2 models include the baseline knowledge of your applicants and trainees, and of course if you're doing your residency, they come in knowing nothing, so it's very uniform. If you do a fellowship, you don't really know what your trainees know coming in because they're probably coming in from an African medical school and their knowledge base is just going to be very varied. The length is quite a bit longer for a training program that's a residency versus a fellowship. The number of graduates is going to be more for a fellowship versus a residency. The competency of your graduates is going to be more focused for an MSICS program and more diverse and versatile for a residency program. The planning and design time required is a lot more for a residency than it is for a fellowship, and the importance of getting local accreditation is a lot more for a residency program than for a fellowship. So in our setting, we decided on a full residency program initially because of the needs of the region. So that included surgery, including probably 90% of our surgeries are cataracts. But the population has really diverse medical needs, and there are very few ways for our patients to get those needs met. So we wanted to address those. And we're a stationary hospital. We're not short-term. We don't come and go. We just live there. So we wanted to be able to serve our patients well. Also, Bangalo is a national reference center. So our patients often, at least half of our patients come from the capital city. Many patients travel by car 2 or 3 days to get to us. And also there's no ophthalmology residency program in Gabon other than this residency that we decided to start. So our priorities were practical training in surgery, well-rounded competency for our graduates, and a desire to provide at least one residency for the country. However, other arguments for embarking on an MSICS fellowship is that in Africa, Francophone Africa, their model is typically for ophthalmology residencies to provide a lot of observation of surgeries, but no actual, or very little actual surgical experience for residents. So a lot of trainees will graduate with parts of 10 cataract surgeries at the end of their ophthalmology residency. So there are a lot of ophthalmologists out there in Africa that have a good baseline fund of knowledge of ophthalmology, but they can't do surgery. But they could be so much more effective for their population if they did have that surgery. So because fellowships are shorter, there can be a bigger population level impact in a shorter period of time. You may decide to do a focus program, such as what happened on Mercy ships, where they would do their best to treat some other problems, but for the most part, they turned away other problems and just focused on the intervention that was the most effective and shortest, with the biggest quality impact. Also, there's a shorter time commitment for fellowships, and the schedules are more flexible. So at Bangalo, we are probably going to be adding a fellowship onto our residency program, and that's because we're adding an ophthalmologist. Our patient volume has increased a lot since COVID. We've recently been paid by the National Insurance Program. We have our new USAID sponsored building, so we have more space, and also the COS family donating to used ophthalmic microscopes and other equipment is allowing us to increase our capacity. So we have some ophthalmologists in Libreville who are very interested in this MSICS fellowship, and I hope that we'll be able to go forward with that. So elements of a residency program in Africa look very much like they look anywhere else. We have the freedom to openly share the gospel with our trainees and disciple them, do Bible studies, and otherwise many of the elements are the same as what you would see in the US. We have very specific admission criteria for our trainees. They all need to be, we require them to be less than 40 years old because as you get older, it gets harder to learn microsurgery, and your end competency may be less, and we want our graduates to be very successful. Also, we require them to be graduates of accredited medical programs in their African country. They need to be Christians because we don't want our graduates to just get this diploma under their belt and then go work for the government as a bureaucrat, which many ophthalmologists in Gabon do, probably half of them. Because once you are a specialist in a medical field, medical doctor, you are well respected in the society and you can dip your hands in the pocket of the government. So we don't want to be wasting our time training people like that. We would love to train graduates who want to elevate the name of Jesus throughout the world. So also language. We require our graduates to be speakers of both French and English. French is the local language there, besides, there's 35 tribal languages in Gabon and many other in neighboring countries, but we require both French and English. We also require that our graduates not be separated from spouses for more than a year because we think that's asking for trouble. And we require some kind of financial plan, either a plan to pay back their residency through remaining at Bungalow Hospital for 5 years after their training versus having a sponsoring hospital to take care of their expenses during their training, including salary and housing and travel for conferences and licenses and so on. So in Francophone Africa, the standard is for a student right out of high school to go to medical school directly for 7 years, and that last year is a practicum, kind of like an internship, but it may not be supervised. And then their ophthalmology residency is 4 years after that. But at Bungalow, so for our admission criteria, we're requiring a supervised internship beforehand and a 3-year residency program that's, the material actually can be completed in 3 years, but in practicality, we've been flexible, and because of needing to retake some exams and research projects and so on, it's actually taken 4 years. So why do we require English? Textbooks are really easier to find in English and are better quality. But we also feel strongly that students need to be fluent in their native language. It's not only their heart language, but just to have them feel competent in their own culture. And so we decided on primarily French curriculum the first year, and years 2 through 4 are in English. Housing and transportation has been a surprisingly difficult and cumbersome situation because culturally you need to provide these for your residents. It's not like in the United States where the resident provides those for themselves. So you need to provide a furnished housing situation. You are the landlord, you are the maintenance director. You can build or rent, but you should plan on getting cultural advisors to tell you what you need to provide. And probably you're going to need to provide a vehicle because, especially for when your trainees are on call, they need to be able to get into work, and there are no taxis and people don't own the private vehicles. There are no taxis at night, there are taxis during the day. But so moving on to benefits of training local surgeons. So training local surgeons as opposed to Westerners builds up the local people, raises the education level, gives them role models to look up to for the community, children, students as they grow up. The local surgeons know the culture and faith of their patients, and they can also really help you with administrative hurdles because they understand how the system works there and you don't. So, and primarily, there aren't a lot of American ophthalmologists who want to move overseas to take care of this worldwide cataract problem, versus there are a lot of indigenous people who would like to learn surgery. It also provides continuity for patients and for the institution. They will multiply your discipleship and professional efforts and provide more qualified teachers for Africa. So why treat them locally, or train them locally? Why not bring them to Western countries? Well, traditionally the main argument is to avoid brain drain, and that means taking all of the smartest and brightest people in a developing country and moving them to developed countries because they come for their training and then they don't want to go back. And there are some caveats to that. There are some positive effects to brain drain, and that is that they may provide motivation for students in their area who see there's a way to escape my situation. They got some education and they were able to leave and get out of here. So maybe other people will want to be educated. There's also future communication, collaboration, and education that crosses borders after people leave their home country. However, I think that even with those caveats, brain drain is a serious problem, and we don't want to impoverish developing nations of their best and brightest. Also, when you train them where they are, you show trainees what they have and what they can have and not what they don't have. If they come to do their training in a situation that's not realistic for them, they know how to do it now in their new situation in the Western country, but they don't know how to do it back home. Versus if you train them locally, then you are training them with resources that are actually attainable for them. It's also good for Americans to see other parts of the world. It helps us as we engage with those other parts of the world. And also, as trainees remain home, their hearts remain engaged with their people, and those big brains will be working for their country's benefit. And we're going to finish with challenges to MSICS training programs, at least the one that we have had. And there are a lot of challenges that we'll go through quickly. Accreditation has been our primary difficulty, and this is mostly an issue for residency programs. And of course, it wouldn't be an issue for a residency program that is already affiliated with the university because they would have accreditation. But Bangalo is a private institution, and so this has been a problem for us. Why desire accreditation for your graduates? It provides graduates equal footing with their colleagues. It allows them the authority to teach their colleagues and share and spread and multiply, like we talked about. It opens their employment options. So graduates of non-accredited residency programs can work at private institutions because they have their medical license already from their accredited medical school that is a prerequisite for the program. And maybe that would keep a lot of graduates working in missions hospitals and prevent them from changing their career path and becoming bureaucrats with the government. But that really isn't a fair methodology. If you have done your job, they've worked hard, they deserve it, and they need to have that freedom of determining their future employment. In Gabon, only programs run by the government-run university are accredited by the university. And the government also determines what's recognized as a university. And there's nothing in Gabon that really resembles the ACGME for private training accreditation. CAMIS is the closest organization, and that is the gold standard really for university accreditation across Africa. So if you have a graduate from a university in Gabon and they want to move to Senegal, Senegal will look at the university in Gabon and say, does this university have CAMIS accreditation? But unfortunately, CAMIS only accredits universities, so Bangalo can't apply for that. Graduates, we already talked about that. There are accreditation-related organizations. There's the International Council of Ophthalmology that provides standardized exams and fellowships, but not accreditation for programs. The Pan-African Academy of Christian Surgeons has a lot of surgical specialties and would consider ophthalmology if there was enough interest. But even if there was, it's still not the same as accreditation, although PACS has achieved accreditation for the DRC. The West African College of Surgeons provides some private accreditation as well, but it's not accepted by all countries, and it's not the same, again, as your home country accreditation. COS is useful for general surgery for accreditation, but doesn't pertain to ophthalmology, and the West African Society of Ophthalmology runs conferences, but doesn't provide accreditation. So those are some different accreditation hurdles and information in our setting, and wherever you are in the world, you will probably find something similar. Culture really affects every part of our lives in Gabon, and academics and ophthalmology is no exception. So in Francophone Africa, professors are all essentially PhDs. So what happens is that you graduate from your ophthalmology residency, and then you go to work for a university, and then you have different hurdles that you need to pass, primarily consisting of publishing papers that give you your gradation of title to professor. So they really distinguish between doctor and professor there. And their academic work also includes didactics. So you may or may not find yourself accepted by your peers in Africa as being qualified to be a professor in teaching or residency, which can also be a barrier to acquiring accreditation. Paperwork took me 10 years to get a medical license there. We applied 3 different times. They lost our paperwork entirely twice, and their staff changed 3 or 4 times during that period of time. So paperwork can be an issue. And then, of course, the issue of who does surgery usually. So our program is very practical. It's a lot like the residency that I went through at the University of Minnesota. But their ophthalmology residencies are a lot more kind of surgery and academic space. They publish a lot of papers on demographics. So there's really kind of a disconnect there. And personally, I feel like we don't need a lot of theoretical in Africa. We need feet on the ground and hands doing surgery. Another challenge is supply chain and remoteness. There are a few eye drops available for purchase in Gabon, but there's really nothing else ophthalmology related. There's no equipment, there's no instruments, there's no office supplies. You can't get fluorescein strips or Wexel sponges or anything within the same country. So everything that we have comes from overseas. We get a lot of our products from India, from Oralab or Apasami. We get some from Europe through IDA or Action Meteor. Some come from the US on a container, but we only have the container once a year, occasionally twice a year, but usually once a year. And it takes 4 months to get there once you've waited for your year to be up. So there's a big delay. Also, there's bumpy roads. That 350 miles from the capital city down to Bongolo can be a little worrisome when you're buying a YAG laser, for example, or something like that. And then there's import and customs fees. Equipment repair is a big challenge for any eye clinic. It's located in the jungle in a rural place. So we don't have any biomed ophthalmology techs, and oftentimes equipment breaks. Or if it's donated, it's used already, and so its lifetime is shorter, so it's going to break faster. Or it doesn't fit exactly to your complementary setup. And because our staff all speak French, it's hard to find training courses for them. So you could send them to India, but they speak English in these courses, and so I can't send my graduates there. We did find 1 2-week course that I sent somebody to, but this is a big problem, and it takes up a lot of my time, even though I don't know anything about it, but I'm kind of the best there is. And Samaritan's Purse has sent biomed techs twice, but they generally know surgery, general medicine. They don't know ophthalmology and ophthalmic equipment. So when stuff breaks, it either needs to be repaired or replaced, and that requires finances and time. So there's oftentimes, like recently, where we didn't have a visual field for a year because it broke. So finances, most of our finances come from patient payments. We never want to turn anyone away for lack of finances, and if we believe that they can't pay, then we just provide it for them for free or for a reduced rate. And we really want to keep down our prices, but we still need to pay our staff. They're not missionaries; they live there and they have families, and we need to buy supplies and so on. At one point, the Gabonese insurance program owed the hospital over $500,000, which is a huge sum for us. And so we were wondering if we were going to have to close the hospital, but we spent a lot of time praying for several years, and they just came through last month. So we're really relieved about that. And some programs can subsidize care for the poor by charging more or providing specialty services for the rich. But in our setting, that's not really possible because we're so far from the capital city where all of the wealthy patients reside. And we don't have the housing, and there are just many different reasons that doesn't work in our setting. So I was feeling quirky when I put this up. Slide together. This is my husband and I. So administration is a challenge, as it is anywhere, I'm sure. We don't have a human resources department at our hospital. We do have a hospital administrator who's Gabonese and is wonderful, but he's often away at the capital dealing with a lot of paperwork. Employees are on vacation. They're quite often sick. Our employees get malaria all the time and are absent. Sometimes they're absent without permission. Education of our staff is also a big deal. Because we're in a rural location, even as it is in the United States, sometimes your population is not as educated, and so it's hard to find somebody that's qualified. So our nurses' aides, the last 2 that we hired, one was mowing lawns, and the other one was a 32-year-old who just graduated from high school 2 or 3 years ago. And we will do all of their training ourselves. And we do have a nursing school at our hospital, but They graduate without knowing any ophthalmology, so we need to train them as well because they are the first line to see patients. So another challenge with these programs is finding African trainees. So first of all, you need to find somebody who meets the admission criteria, especially what their heart is, why they want to do this, and somebody who is content with your level of accreditation that you can offer. So finding a good source of trainees is important, and ours has been mostly through word of mouth. You also need to find a building that works for you. You need to assess your needs. You can rent, repurpose, build, or buy. If you build like we did here on this picture, this is our building halfway through, you'll notice your contractors may have varying levels of skill. Our contractors were unable to construct a 2-story building that was either connected to another building or built on a 2-plane slope. Also, they may not meet American expectations for their work. They may have, pipes that emerge in the middle of a doorway, things like that. So even though I knew nothing about building, I was still supervising and needed to be supervising. So we can be tempted to ask American volunteers to come to do a lot of the construction, but the problem that we've had with that is that they're not there later when problems arise. So we've kind of swung the other way and gone back to local contractors because they're at least present. We've also had problems with electricity and plumbing in our buildings because those require some specialty skills. And we are drawing to a close here, but you really need to protect your time for teaching. There are a lot of responsibilities that vie for your time. And so just my advice would be to consider what help you need in order to be able to prioritize the things that are important to you. Specialty training and patient care. I wish I had done all the fellowships. So both for training my residents and for patient care, there are no subspecialists in the entire country of Gabon. So if we can't do it at Bongolo, there's no place for us to send patients to. So we're kind of it, but we're not alone. We have help from many specialists through COS, such as Christine Elson and various people. And that has been a huge help. And also the Holy Spirit and the power of God really bail us out of a lot of difficulties, and we're never alone. So we serve a faithful God, and he often grants us manna that I can only see in hindsight. So thank you very much for your attention.
Wendy, so my work in Sierra Leone, where I did a lot of this research and corruption being a huge problem, I wondered if you had any means or had explored any way of teaching your residents how to combat corruption by other ophthalmologists. But for instance, in the ophthalmology training programs in most of Africa, the faculty don't want to teach the young residents surgery because they compete with them for those few patients they can pay. A lot of problems that we just aren't aware of in the U.S. Do you cover any of that in your residency program?
Mostly we just teach by example. I want my trainees to be better than I am, if possible, in everything. And I think as we model that through discipleship, I think it's something that catches, and hopefully they will pass that same on to their trainees. One of the reasons that we certainly deal with corruption on varying levels all the time. But yeah, we just try to model by example. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy.